Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spring of Code, where we are introducing some of the really nice open source projects and really nice organizations. And today in the list, we have mentors and maintainers from AboutCode. Thank you, Philip, Ayan, and Stephen for joining us. And yeah, really looking forward to learn more about the AboutCode and how to get started with the organizations and how to get started with the projects. So yeah, if you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, so
Sure.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
go for it, Philippe. You start.
Yeah, so I was just going because I'm the upper right corner. So Philippe Omodaran, I'm a maintainer for a tool called ScanCode Toolkit and one of the leaders for the AboutCode project. And I'm also co-founders of SPDX at the Linux Foundation, which stands for Software Product Data Exchange. Co-founder of another project called Clearly Defined, which tries to scan all the code somehow, and several other projects.
Yep, and I'm Steven Esser. I work with Philippe in the AboutCode organization. I'm kind of spearheading the Google Summer of Code for AboutCode this year. And yeah, I'm a maintainer and developer on a number of AboutCode open source projects, which you guys will learn about later.
Hi, I am Ayan. I currently working for AboutCode, and now I am a developer in about Nextbay and working for the same project and like taking it forward later. Thank you.
That's really great. Thanks for introducing yourself to the audience. And yeah, we do have India say namaste. Like we greet ourselves like namaste. And thanks, Mayank. Yeah. So so can we know more about code? What are the major projects and what the about code in the whole is?
Yeah, so maybe Stephen has prepared a couple slides to accompany and give a bit of more liveliness to it. So maybe you can go through that. And feel free to interrupt us anytime if you have questions. So can you share your screen, Stephen?
Yep. Yeah, I'm just setting that up right now. Here we go. Okay. Should be loading up there. Cool.
Yeah.
So I will start here. Where do we go? There we go. Okay, yeah, so like we mentioned, we're a part of the AboutCode.org or AboutCode organization. So go through the agenda. Oh, this is the wrong one. I'm sorry. My bad there.
So yeah, till then, AboutCode is taking part in GSoC, so do consider applying, making proposal, and reaching out to the maintainers. They are already here. You can ask your doubts live, and they are ready to help you, and they are ready to answer your questions. So please keep up your questions in the chat box, and let's make this whole podcast, whole of the session more impressive, or more engaging.
Yeah, more interactive. And actually, to your point,
Yeah, more interactive too.
It's been difficult. We're all learning there. I guess there's no magic formula, but with the COVID, everybody's been working at a distance, which is good because for many people it was difficult to travel. But we're learning how to get more engaging discussion without being face to face, which is difficult. It's a pain.
Yes, definitely. So just a quick rundown on the agenda. Do a quick intro. I'll talk about the tech stack we use at AboutCode, kind of some background on some of our GSoC 2020 initiatives and projects. I'll give some tips on how you can start contributing to our organization. Ian will give us a little testimonial about his experience in the organization and in past years at GSoC. We'll have a few links to resources, and then we'll be able to answer any of your questions in the Q&A portion. So the problem that AboutCode tries to address is the number of open source packages that are used in products and during development continues to increase. If you think about a Node.js project or NPM project, when you run npm install, you're pulling in potentially hundreds of thousands of Node packages. Each of those have their own software license, and those software licenses can range from like permissive MIT or Apache style licenses to more restrictive or copyleft or even commercial and proprietary licenses. Since it's so easy to kind of install these packages, it can be difficult sometimes to trace just exactly what is used in your code. A lot of the packaging systems, the licensing clarity is not always great. So even if you're using a bunch of open source packages, it may be hard to figure out what licenses those pieces of code fall under. Which, if you're working in production environments or for companies that are deploying products, there is legal obligations and risks that have to be managed in the licensing space. And we have kind of developed our tools, even though there is others out there, but there's no single kind of technique that is foolproof when you're trying to determine licensing and origin of software packages. So AboutCode has a suite of tools that aims to kind of alleviate that pain, but it's by no means a one-stop, one-click, one-button solution. There's other implications involved when you're talking about origin, including naming and how data is exchanged, even between package repositories and when you're trying to, I guess, express what software is used in your code base. It's kind of hard to figure out a generalized way to do that. So we have a number of libraries that aim to kind of help that problem. So AboutCode, I kind of went over the various focuses AboutCode organization has. AboutCode itself is kind of our open source facing end. It's what we fall under in GSoC. So we are commercially, or we do have a separate business based on some of our open source tools, but the open source organization itself falls under AboutCode. And down here we have a couple documentation links. So maybe Philippe, you want to touch on some of these?
Yeah. So very simply, I mean, if you think about it, we're there to help reuse open source more efficiently and faster, better. Knowing it's very easy to get, fetch, install a package, but you don't always know what you get when you do, for instance, npm install. You may get 400 packages by having just one declared dependency. If you install Docker image, you may have 10,000 packages installed, not 400. So that's a lot. And the thing is that as Steven was saying, the data is not always handy or readily structured or visible. And so what we do is we focus on primary data collection. That is, how can you properly detect and normalize the data from all the package manifest? How can you detect the license mentions and the copyright notices that exist in any package, any code? And we're really trying to be the very best in class, and I think we're being recognized for that in this narrow niche we're in, as being not too shabby in how we do that. So the first thing is this low-level library that can provide raw primary data. The second thing is tools that leverage these. Eventually in scripted pipeline, if we have the time, I'll do a very short demonstration after that of one of the tools that has a web UI. Most of our tools are actually libraries and command line tools rather than web-based stuff.
We would love to see that demo.
Yeah.
Love to see it.
And so tools to assemble this library together. So one example is, ScanCode Toolkit, for instance. You want to collect both license and copyright together, or tool called codeio that's the one I will demonstrate, which tries to do the analysis of complex root file system, virtual machine, and Docker image, and which are like gigabyte big and can have, as I said, potentially thousands or tens of thousands of packages. So it's a lot of stuff. And so the thing is being able to assemble these in scripted pipelines, so it's reusable, understandable, and can be traced and reused. And last, we're building data. And that means data which are free and open source like the rest, which allow to support that. So the first one today is the license library. So we have one of the largest library of open source licenses out there, with about 700 licenses and about 20,000 notices and mentions. So close to 30,000 now. So it's a lot. And we're also building a tool to collect, aggregate, and correlate package vulnerabilities. We're putting together also a large database of all the packages in a normalized fashion. It's going to be called the PackageDB. That's it. Yeah, and so go ahead.
Yeah, so these were, we touched a lot on this, but the purpose of our tools in AboutCode is to basically figure out all these different aspects here. What's the origin of the code? Who maintains it? How is it vulnerable? Is there security vulnerabilities? What are the dependencies there? How is this particular piece of code built? What's the license and copyright? So these are all the kind of high-level problems that our tools aim to solve.
Yeah, and just to add something there, if you think about the way we can build software by, pretty much like Lego, you take open source libraries and you can assemble them to create larger working piece of code. That's really the new skill in a way. Being able to write code is essential. Being able to assemble code is probably as important, if not more important. Now, when you assemble code, you can pick the right one or the wrong one. You could pick a package that's, has an unknown license or has non-vulnerabilities, or eventually it's unmaintained, buggy, what else? It's really important to support these new skills of being able to assemble open source in new interesting applications and systems to understand everything you can about this package so you can make the right choice. And or if you've not made the right choice, that you can understand what would be the alternatives and how to remediate the issues.
Yeah, and then some of our, AboutCode, our tools are used not only by us, but they're used in a variety of different projects and foundations, and we get support from a number of these companies listed here in the form of monetary support, bug reports, bug fixes, PRs. So it's really kind of, we're trying to leverage that open source ecosystem in order to better our tools and further adoption of a lot of these aspects of, I guess, software composition, in the hopes that the more our tools are adopted, the better information, software information can be displayed and pushed upstream.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, so we were about to discuss on what are the tech stacks being used. Like people are asking, like, tech stacks required to contribute in the organization, and
Sure.
what are the major projects? Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, so our tech stack is primarily Python. All of our major command line tools and libraries are written in Python, including ScanCode Toolkit, which is the main kind of source code scanning engine that we have. Some of our ancillary tools like Delta Code and Fetch Code are integrated at various levels in our applications, and they're mostly written in Python. And the kind of vulnerability data source that was discussed earlier and ScanCode.io are both Django applications. So yeah, we're primarily a Python-based organization with, there's some C in Scan Code Toolkit and some other kind of external libraries that can be bundled in here, but the majority of the code is Python. And then outside of that, we have a few JavaScript projects, Scan Code Workbench, which is kind of the front end. Think of it as like the front end to viewing Scan Code Toolkit output data. So Scan Code Toolkit will basically run a scan and dump a big JSON file full of data. And Scan Code Workbench just kind of gives you the ability to load that JSON blob up and visualize all the various license detections and package detections. And then obviously we use JavaScript on the front end for a lot of our web applications, including codeio and vulnerable code. And then on the back end, for when we use databases, we primarily use Postgres. The last bullet there, some NLP, text processing and reverse engineering, ML, all of that is handled in Python. So, the typical kind of NumPy stack. Ian has the most experience with that here, so he can give you some more insight later on. But this is kind of the overview of the tech stack.
Great. So we do have a lot of Python and Django fans out there, so they can also contribute to the organization and learn. You will get a lot of learning opportunities from they are really super awesome maintainers and super awesome mentors, and you will love to have them. And please do consider applying for this organization, making your proposal. Do check out, connect with mentors and maintainers there, and we already have it. So have them, so you can ask your questions right now. So Sondare has a question is it necessary to start contributing to the organization before we write a proposal for GSoC? So
go ahead.
Yeah, in general, it makes you stand out as an applicant if you have some valid code contributions. The fact of the matter is we get a ton of project proposals in GSoC, upwards of 80 every single year. And obviously we can't support nearly that number of students, so we have to be selective in who we choose. And our criteria comes down to project proposal quality, and secondly, and sometimes more importantly, their contribution efforts and efforts to want to contribute to our organization. So we do take that into account, and that can range from just being active in our chats, which I'll show you a couple links later, as well as being able to contribute PRs, effective PRs. We want to be able to see that you're able to work in our environment, just so our organization and you, as the student, get the most out of GSoC in terms of a learning experience. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, it's really always better if you have some prior knowledge of the community, if you have some prior knowledge, if you have solved some PRs ahead of the time. So that really matters, and that really helps most in your proposal, since we already know that you are already you are already okay with the environment, and you are already mixed with the environment, and you already know about the code itself. So that really helps very much.
One thing that's important there is it's what matters is if you do a contribution, do something that's useful. So we receive a lot of very tiny contributions of aspiring students, which may be adding a few words in a doc or fixing a typo. They're useful in their own right, but they don't demonstrate the capability of you as an aspiring student to be able to do basic things like writing some code that can run. We're very welcoming of new students and beginners, but we want to make sure that you do some effort on your side to show that if we were to pick your project and select you, we're doing the right thing. and you're also qualified to be able to succeed. We want to make sure that you can complete your project. The other thing that's important to understand, this is not school. Forget everything. We're not your teachers, right? We're not your friends either. We're there to do fun, open source work together. But it's really important to understand that this is not school. We're not there to judge you, to grade you. We have to progress together and report your progress to Google, because that's part of the bargain and part of the deal, because Google is paying you for the work you're doing here. But this is not school. That's really important. And therefore, it's really important to ensure that you communicate a lot with your mentors, with the rest of the contributors. If you are stuck on anything, even before you start applying, if you have questions, ask questions. There are no stupid questions. There are sometimes ways to ask questions which are not great. So you can learn to ask good questions, yet there's never any stupid question.
Yes, the essence is like we should always maintain the spirit of the open source. Like we are contributing to open source organization, so we should also maintain the spirit of that. Like do not spam the PRs. Like if you are doing typo things and making PRs or making issues or not following the templates or guidelines, so you are not only wasting your time, your reputation, but also wasting maintainers' time. So please do consider, like they already have PR templates, issue templates. So please do consider reading everything. Every line of those, every line written in the template are very useful, are very relevant, and they're really helpful for both maintainers and as well as the one who is making the PR or one who is raising the issue or one who is trying to solve something. So yes.
Yeah.
So
one thing that's important there also is that it's okay if you don't know everything. We don't expect you to know everything, right? We don't expect you to know everything about our projects. That's what you're learning. So, and even as part of your contributions, when you start applying, you may not know all the things you need to know to deliver your project. An example, not last year, but the year before, one of the students we accepted didn't know much about Git, right? He was great on everything else, but his ability to understand Git and do version control things, it was terrible. And that was okay. He had the time between the time he submitted his proposal and the time the project started to actually, get down into good Git tutorials and get the fingers sharpened so he could hone his Git skills. So it's okay not to know everything. You need to be ready to learn and learn quick in some case if you have some gaps like that, for instance.
Yeah, that is the most important. Like you should have the determination to learn. Like if you are getting a chance to contribute in some of the big projects, you should always be willing to learn. And if you are willing to learn, there is no one to stop you. There is no one to take you down. So that's all. And secondly, like if I'm a beginner, I don't know about your organization, I don't know about your programs or like projects. So how can I as a beginner get started with all the project or with the specific projects or with the organization itself?
Sure. So that is actually a common question that we get. We've tried to put together, so we'll attempt to share these slides later so you guys can get access to the documentation, or not the documentation, the links to the documentation. But we do have kind of a small contributing documentation that we go through. But primarily, it's up to you. It's open source, so you as the student have the choice to work on what interests you. So the thing I tell most of any aspiring student is take a look at our list of projects in GitHub and kind of go through each one and see what's interesting. Maybe if you've never run any of our tools, maybe try to run a couple of them and decide, and figure out what you want to run. So for instance, Scan Code Toolkit, we have a bunch of documentation as to how to get started, how to install it, et cetera, how to run a scan. I would encourage students to basically go through our project, look at the documentation, maybe try to run a couple examples here and there and see what happens and see what interests you there. So maybe after running an example scan, you figure out, oh, hey, this is kind of cool. I can see, copyright detections, license detections. Maybe I want to work on improving license detection or these various things. So from there, once you found a project that you're interested in, have a look through our issues. Many times some are labeled kind of easy issues or good first issues. So you can filter by those, kind of look through and see perhaps if any of these catch your eye. But that's primarily the easiest way to get started in our organization and environment. From there, you can ask questions on our Gitter chat channel, which is here. And this is kind of primarily how we communicate with students and with other contributors in our open source space. You can see there's been tons of activity the past couple weeks. And yeah, so basically look through the projects, interact with the community, ask questions, try out our tools, and just kind of explore. That's kind of that's how open source is different, I think, from your school and classwork is, when you take a class, there's a set curriculum. You have to learn all that stuff. There's no choice. You're not really choosing, I don't want to learn this or I want to learn something else. Open source is different. You can kind of go and follow your interest. Even if it's, you want to learn something new about Python, maybe seek out those particular issues that have to deal with whatever you're trying to learn. Or if you want to learn JavaScript, maybe take a look at our front-end tools and front-end tooling and see what could be accomplished there.
So there was a question from Ariane, which was asking how to understand or to get comfortable with the code organization of the project of an org. Ian, maybe you want to give a few words there, and I can complete.
Sure. So what I found was when we are trying to solve some issues from the issue tracker or anything, the bugs or anything. So when we start doing that, we start with a small subset of the code and try to learn what's going on there and where the bug comes from. So that's a sort of starting point to learning a bit of the code base, because the code bases are big. They are like really intimidating, and that was true for me. But when you start doing small things and ask help from maintainers that where is this bit of code doing, what is this going on, and like in the in the Gitter chat or other stuff. So there we start small and start gaining more knowledge about the code base on that, and then asking when you are trying to form your project, you are talking with the maintainers or the mentors, and then they provide additional information or as you need the how the code base is structured, what is going on there. So yeah, starting small but starting good, and then going on, keeping on learning. So that's kind of Philip would like to add.
Yeah. So one of the things we're trying to do, I'm not saying we're succeeding, but what we're trying to do is to ensure that the code we write is readable and easy to read. And I see Ian smiling because I've been bugging him when I was reviewing and when I'm reviewing his PR, and I will be bugging everyone's that submits a PR that I review to ensure the code can be read and is easy to understand. The thing is that you write the code once and it's going to be read hundreds and hundreds of times. So if the code is not readable, you go back to your own code 6 months from now and you're scratching your head, says, oh, what was I writing there? And so if you yourself cannot reread the code 6 months from now, there's no way somebody else can understand. So we're trying to ensure the code is easier to read. Doesn't mean gives you a clue, but we're trying to also to do a lot of tests. And there was a question about test-driven development. We're not obsessed about test-driven development, but we're obsessed about ensuring we have testing in place with pretty much all the commits. And so the tests are exercising the code base, and they're a great way to understand how the code base works. because they give you practical example on how the code is supposed to behave. What are the inputs? What are the outputs? Now, if you're so test and test-driven development, the way we handle that, the way I handle that, but it's not an absolute truth, is I like when there's a bug, unless the bug is trivial, to start by writing a test that fails. And that's a good thing because sometimes it's not a bug, or the conditions to reproduce the bug are so complex that it's difficult. Now, it's better to do it right in a test that you code and you can save and commit, rather than trying to do it by hand separately. So if you do that, then after that, the work plan, I'd like to say, the work plan to actually fix this bug is clear. You have a bug, a test that's red that fails, and your goal is to make the code green and the test green, which is also a very satisfying thing, by the way. Personally, I found it extremely satisfying when I go from red to green.
So, yeah, it's truly very satisfying. Like you are seeing 30 to 40 checks being successfully green, like it makes your day. When one of that becomes red, like, oh my God, that's ruined my day.
So the problem is that we're a bit obsessed by tests. There's over 30,000 unit tests in ScanCode Toolkit, for instance, and there's probably a bit too much in the sense we need to optimize this test suite. It can take an hour to run on a typical laptop with multiple cores to run the whole test suites. So, so if you're stuck with, if you start running some tests, make sure you ask questions on the chat, because we can give you hints on how to focus on running just a few tests and not run everything at once. And then when you push things in a PR, then we have continuous integration jobs that run the background that show you, and we'll run the whole test suite, which takes 20 minutes on 10 machines, and then you'll get proper feedback on all the test suites if your test by chance or by mistake did hit some path of code that were not planned for ahead of time.
Yeah, so there is a question like, I'm having problem in setting up the environment. So please do consider asking this question in the Greta channel of AboutCode, like what's your specific project is, and
So definitely ask there, because it's not just us who are a part of this organization. We actually have a lot of people who are pretty frequent contributors that can really help, and they've all kind of been in your guys' shoes in the past. So they can easily answer your questions and kind of point you in the right direction. So
yeah, Philip was asking for some demo. Like we do have some expectations of some more demo, like CLI or some working demo, despite of the presentation. Like presentation was really good. It is really helpful. We will be sharing the presentation with all the members. So yeah, so time for the demo.
Yeah, so I'm sharing my screen and we'll be sending the slides. So you tell me when you, oh, there you go. So as I said, a lot of our tools are command line tools. So command line is not super sexy, you know, in many cases. So for instance, here I have a file which contains some license, and let me make that a bit bigger. And I can do scan code, minus license, minus license text. I want a JSON pre-printed output to screen. That's a dash. And I say, do that on this file, which is just named K. So what's going to happen there is, oh my God, I'm in development environment, so it's going to take forever. Oh no, not too bad. So what happens there is that it ran the stuff and then provided some output, in this case, as JSON that's printed on screen. Right? And it found that at this pass, this file here is actually a BSD new license, 98.58 out of 100 score. And that's the text that was detected. So it's a pretty simple one. It's a full text. It's not like a short notice or else. So that's an example. But again, that's command line. That's pretty bland. But we have a lot of these tools that are command line. So now let's look at something else, which is generated from scan code. It's more to visualize the data. There's not much. It's just a simple thing that's been taking all the license we have in scan code and building a small website out of it, which is static. But just to highlight a bit the kind of information we track for licenses. So here it's purely static with a bit of JavaScript, and there's maybe an opportunity to do some kind of enhancements there. Even on this small application, there's probably enough work to do something interesting in terms of a project to make that more of a single page app. But if you were to search for, I don't know, well-known license like the GPL, so that gives you a bit of an idea of all the kind of data we track: short name, category owners, homepage, plus, of course, the text below. But we have a lot of data about licenses. And we're a bit the king of the license, open source license. It's important, you know. Open source licensing is what makes open source open source. The big difference between proprietary and open source is the license. So it's not insignificant to be there. Now, another tool is called codeio. So you can, by the way, you'll see all these under the NextB org on GitHub. So Scan Code Toolkit, Scan codeio we're just looking at, and several others. So Scan codeio is a web-based app that's using Django and Postgres as a backend, together with a task queue called Celery. And what it does is that you can create a project and scan files. So for instance, here, I say I want to scan a Docker image. Let me take that. And, well, I'm going to give that the same name. So I'm uploading that. It's a small image, Docker image from Quay as a registry. And I'm going to run a pipeline there. And the pipeline is already these scripts we've talked about. So we have a few. It's a fairly recent project, so there's only a few of these there. But that's the example of what happens when you do a scan of a Docker image. Well, the first is you want to start by extracting the image. Then, if you're not familiar with Docker, Docker has a notion of layered file system. So there's more than one slice of root file system in an image. These are called layers. Where you want to extract these, they're typically tarballs. Then you want to figure out, is this a Linux distro, and what does Linux distro is in that Docker image? And you want to collect a bunch of information about the image, and you want to collect the inventory of all the path. We call that the resource, the files in the image. So it could be files and directories, and we call that the code base resource. And then there may be system packages installed. So if you're on Debian, you have used apt, and you would have Debian install packages. If you're on Alpine, you have apk, and you have Alpine packages. On the RPMs, you have RPMs, and so on and so on. And eventually, you want also to scan for things that wouldn't be installed as system packages, like a Node package, a Maven jar, a PyPy Python package, a RubyGem, these kind of things. And for the rest of it, scan for files and do a few housekeeping operation at the end. So
yeah, that's really great. Like, yeah. Sorry. Go on.
Yeah, no, go ahead. So that's the kind of things we do. Now, the output of that is if I select there to run the Docker pipeline, behind the scene, it's going to upload this file. So right now, it's uploading the file from my machine to this demo server. It's a staging demo server that we run to do some tests. And maybe that's not a superb idea because I'm sharing my video plus an upload on a, I don't have like a super bandwidth here. Can you hear me all right still?
Yeah, we can hear you
Yeah, we
perfectly.
can.
Okay, good. All right, so it's finished. So it's gonna run on its side. And let me show you what happens when you have projects which are completed. This one is a good one, an example one. So first thing is you can see a tally of the number of packages that were detected, the number of files, and whether there was any errors and how many pipelines we did run, whether this runs successfully. And then you can see some high-level information about the project data. Here it tells us, okay, it's an image for Linux, which comes from this place. It's based on Alpine Linux, and it's version 381 of Alpine. And that's where you can file bug, and that's the homepage, and so on and so on, and all the details of how the Docker image was created. And then further down below, you have some very crude information for now. We consider the UI really very simple, and we need a lot of help to make it better, by the way. It's several of the ideas of projects are around that. We've detected one package type, Alpine package. That's kind of makes sense, right? We're on Alpine. And this is the layout of the different license we found. So some of them were, unknown. And we can see all the files that were detected for which there's no known license. There can be tons of reasons why this is unknown, but we can see the path. And the paths in Docker image are typically very long paths like that with long hash directory names. That's the way Docker is internally. So you can see that. You can see information at the package and see which files are part of a package, which files are not part of a package, do some stats, and you can access all the details of packages and files. Plus, there's a crude JSON API where you can do pretty much the same thing. The thing here is that helps you really understand all the different packages that exist in the Docker image. So here, you see, I now know that there was a zlib package, which is installed there. And I have an SSL client here, which is installed here. Or I have something called libsodium, version 1016-R0, which is installed there. In some case, there's more than one file that there's a project called ICU, which means International Consortium for Unicode, something like that. They provide character sets for all the international character that exist. And there's quite a bit of file there. So this is the kind of things we do. So you go from a tarball, you don't know where it's from, you squeeze all the data you can find, and you determine what are the packages, what are the files, in some case, what are the license, or in some case, you don't know what the license, which is okay. It's important to know that you don't know the license. That's an opportunity to actually dive deeper to get the information.
Yeah, that's really great, and it's covering around like a very vast use case, and it's covering from the licensing to manifestation to package handling and everything like that. So that's really great, and it's really helpful for any developer, any organization, or any other company or things like that. So one, we have question from Toxic ST, like what are the prerequisites of contributing in the organization?
So maybe I can say a word, and Steven, you can take over. I think the important things for us, we all work remotely. So you want to have a good spirit. You want to ensure you can communicate a lot. So ask a lot of questions. We're all remote, so the only way we can communicate is through chat. If you don't chat, it's like you don't exist, literally, for a project, because we can't do anything. Make sure you take the time to commit early things in a branch and push a PR so we can discuss on code. It's very hard for us to discuss about things in the abstract. It's hard for everyone. But if you're asking me a question, oh, how can I get started? You know, it's open-ended. It's very difficult for me to answer that question. How can I get started? On the other hand, if you're asking me, okay, I think I fixed this bug here with this commit, but my code doesn't run. I have this failure. Then that's very easy for me to react, because that's something I can put my hands and my head around with it easily. So be practical. That's the point. Be practical. Ask questions. Be good-spirited, and be practical with concrete stuff helps a lot. Steven?
Yeah, no, you touched on a lot of that. I mean, we don't have any particular formal prerequisites. You know, just enthusiasm is the main thing. Enthusiasm, and remember too, we're all working remotely, and we all are, you know, we all are involved with a lot of different things. So it doesn't help to pester, you know, people to review your PRs or to, you know, to answer your questions right away. Be mindful of everyone's time. You know, pestering
be patient,
somebody.
That's a good idea. Be patient.
Yeah. Be very patient, and we will review all the PRs. We get GitHub notifications for all of them, but it doesn't help to pester, and especially if your PR is far from being complete. You know, you kind of want to take a lot of onus on yourself and really try to accomplish as much as you can before asking for help or asking for next steps. You know, that's just kind of what happens in open source. You know, you kind of have to take things on yourself. And if you get stuck, then yeah, ask questions. But if you wait around for your question to be answered before you attempt to do anything, it's not going to work out as well.
Ian?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
better.
doing stuff on your own, in the sense of when you are contributing a bit, you're pushing up a branch and like opening up your like Philip said. So yeah, that helps a lot. And then when it's test failures, or you are having some issues with that, so that there are always people to help, and we have a community of people who are contributing, who all help rather than just the maintainers. So yeah, that's you should try digging around in the code and the issues and see what's going on. We have a lot of helpful comments on the tickets also, on how the bugs are, how you can try to do things with that. So
Yeah. So
be patient.
question about the first year. Can you participate in the first year? Yes, definitely. As they said, there's a French proverb which says the value of one person doesn't wait for the number of years. So your age, your experience doesn't matter. What you can bring to the table, what you can contribute matters. If you cannot write 2 lines of Python, then that's going to be challenging at this stage to join. So don't waste your time if that's the case. And if you're, for instance, you're a Java expert and you're not great in Python, maybe that's not the best way to start with org. And maybe you want to go in the first year work and see whether there's an org that does Java. So just don't do things too hard on yourself, but be mindful also that you need to be able to bring to the table. But again, the number of years doesn't matter. Your resume doesn't matter. We don't care who you are, where you're coming from, what you've learned. it really doesn't matter. And that's very important. So there's also a question about how to write a CV and motivation statement. That's okay. This is not a job seeking. This is not, we're not hiring you, you know, it's, so there's no CV, there's no curriculum vitae for GSoC. It's good that you can write an introduction about yourself, what you like, what you are, your studies, that's okay, but that's a few lines. I'm more interested about what you've done. For instance, if you already contributed in some open source project, that I'm really interested, because I'm going to check out your code and I'm going to see how you write the code and what you did and all that I'm going to look for. If you're telling me all your wonderful academic achievements, well, you know, sure, interesting. Again, this is not a job, this is not school, it's different, it's open source.
Yeah, so that's the beauty of the open source. Like whatever you do, it's already open and it's already public. So you have not to prove your abilities. You should not have to prove your things like your strength and weaknesses. They are already visible, and people are ready to take you and get in touch with you if you are really good at it. So yeah, that's why you should always contribute something in the open source that's really matter most in the industry as well as for the other organizations too. So we have Sundara asking, like, how do we know that the code we are writing is adding value to the organization or we are proceeding in the right direction?
Well, you're gonna get feedback pretty quickly. If it's any good, if it's crap, maybe there'll be no feedback, right? We're very polite and very gentle people. So if it's going in the right direction, it's crap, we'll tell you very early. If it's good and it adds value, we'll tell you and you'll hear from it very quickly. Don't be worried if we are not too quick, because again, you have to be patient. We'll provide feedback, so you'll know and it's really important. If you don't have feedback, you can elicit feedback. Don't be too insistent, because again, be mindful that we have a life also. Sometimes we just don't work the weekends, and we're there to participate in this, but we're not working for Google. We're not paid by Google. We are not working for you either. So it's really important to understand, to put the context there, so there's no ambiguities.
Yeah, that's really important, and especially during the time of Google Summer of Code or any other such open source program. Like there we had lots of contributions, and there is some delay of reviewing the code or something, like getting response on your PRs and issues. So don't get disheartened or things like don't do your community is not responding, because they have their own life too. And as Philip mentioned, like when you have lots of contributions coming in, you have to get a hold on your GitHub notifications too. And that really kind of very hectic job, or like reviewing code is really a hard thing in itself. So it's as hard as creating the code, because we have to go for all the testings, and we have to make sure that everything is working correct, code styles and test unit tests and everything else, right?
Yeah. So to give you an idea, I mean, I see a message from Abdul. I guess I said I will keep bugging you. Yes, I will. But to give you an idea on some of the early PRs, pull requests of either aspiring GSoC participants or during the GSoC, there were cases where we had like 70 to 100 comments on a PR before it was accepted. And we worked on the PR for like 2, 3, 4 weeks. And maybe there was not a lot of code. It's just it was a learning experience where it was about learning our ways, and we're asking for tests. We're sometimes a bit too nitpicking on the code format and the style. We like the code to be readable, because the code you write is going to be written once and read by others. So the same way we like to write our code in a readable way, we like you to write the code in the same way we do. So it can take some time but we're making sure that we're making progress when we do that. It requires a lot of energy on both sides. So, but that's really the way things can progress. And so don't be put down if it takes a while for pull requests to get in and there's a lot of comments. If there's comment, that means there is interest, which is better than, okay, nobody cares.
Yeah. So yeah, these things are, these things get better with time. Like if you are creating your first PR, you would have like a lot of nitpickings from your mentors and from your reviewers. But after certain number of PRs, you already get to familiar, like what's the code structure, what's the code style, that thing that the organization or that the project is following. So you kind of get early responses, early PR merges and things like that, right? So Anthony is asking like, I know HTML, CSS, and JS and object-oriented language Java. So can I contribute to you about code? So there is some space for projects like HTML that contributes consumes HTML, CSS, and JS too.
So
Yep. Yeah, so there we do have, JavaScript specific projects, and if you know object-oriented language as well, you can probably leverage that into contributing Python code, after learning basic syntax. So it's really up to you. That's the point of open source is you don't make contributions to stuff that you're not interested in or that you're not going to use. That's the whole deal. And that's the beauty of it. You can kind of pick and choose what you want to do. So, this isn't a job where you have to fit a certain job description in order to land the position. If you're interested and are willing to learn how to, code in Python, if all you're familiar with is Java, a lot of times that's enough, as long as you're interested in solving the issue at hand, whether it be, fixing a particular bug or improving performance. Any of these aspects are language agnostic, and it's really up to the enthusiasm of the potential contributor.
Go ahead, Ian. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll go on about my previous experience with AboutCode a bit. So I did the GSoC previous year, 2020, and Philip and Steven were my mentors, and they helped a lot with helpful interactions from the start, and we talked a lot about the project beforehand, so we know what we are doing and what we will try to do over the project, and it's very helpful when we are sort of even going into implementation and having a structure of what we are doing into our proposal, and have a lot of feedback from the maintainers and how are you and Philip and Steven and everyone, so we know that we are going into the right direction. And then in going into the GSoC, we had a weekly meetings and feedback on our work, and we had set up extra meetings when we wanted to, if there were things that were bugging us. And then also on the things that I liked a lot about code is that we have the organization has a very high quality of code quality and design and testing and everything, a lot of that. So when we are starting, it is obviously it takes time to learn and everything, but that's very helpful, and that was very enjoyable because we were learning a lot, because the code, yeah, it kind of works and everything, right, but it also needs to be very readable and modular and testable, because it's open source, right? So a lot of people will read, and we need to make sure that that will be helpful and readable. So that was one thing I liked a lot, and I hope everyone.
For better or worse, I guess we have very high standards for quality of code and design, which is probably up to the level of and the demands that you would have in the most advanced software development team doing that in a professional way for a company. So whatever you'll learn with us will probably not be wasted time. Now, to the point of Steven, what's really super important is do something that you like. So I don't know how many orgs there are, but there's maybe 100. There are thousands and thousands of open source projects, and you can start your own. GSoC is one thing. But it's not the only thing, right? There's the summer of code, but you can start and contribute to a project at any time. And so it's maybe you won't get the stipends from Google and so on, but the point is you will learn as much, and it can be as prestigious and as important for your resume than the GSoC can be. So that's one thing. The second thing, you can start your own project. That's always not a bad idea, right? And the point is, if you are not interested in code analysis, don't go to AboutCode, right? It's do the thing that interests you, because if you're not interested, it's going to be a bad experience for you, and eventually not a superb experience for us if you ever get access to it. So do the things that are interesting for you. Yeah, and to your point, Kushal, yes, we're very welcoming. Yeah, so having your PR reviewed is a big step. We try to ensure that they can be merged. In contrast with many other projects where we'll never be in your face saying, oh, your stuff is crap, go away. You will never get that from us. I mean, some projects can be a bit abrupt, and that's not our style, and that's probably not a great sign of maturity and quality of code to have this kind of behavior anyway. So to your point, Kushal, getting your PR reviewed and not merged is a great stepping stone. It's much easier for me to review a code contribution than a doc contribution. Again, because there's a lot of small PR on documentation, which they're not spam, they're useful, but they're not as interesting as code. Unless, because there's doc and doc. Ian, for instance, has been involved in a lot of work on the doc, building tools to organize the generation of the documentation website, and contributing significant documentation and tutorials. That's doc, but that's not the same as a typo, right? Typo is not doc, and typo is not a contribution. Now, take that from an expert. I contribute a lot of very tiny typo PRs. I actually even once did a contribution to, I can't remember which Google project, that was literally a 1-character typo. And they asked for a contributor license agreement for that 1 character. And for whatever reason, the PR has been sitting idle for 3 years for that 1 character. And it's in the last 2 months that it's finally been merged. So they merged my 1 character after 3 years. And that was such a relief. But the point is that 1-character contributions are not super useful, super interesting, super important, so they may take years to be merged. So try to go with something a bit more meaty.
Yeah, try to be more specific and try to be try to solve issues that are really there. Like if you can, always try to solve issue that is really important and that's helping the organization in some kind. So docs are really important, to be honest. Someone like beginners like me or someone else always starts with doc, and they're really important. But again, as he said, like typos and contributing for typos and for docs are 2 different things. And yeah, so Devesh just asked like what are the prerequisites, any specific language? So we had already asked these questions, and the video will be available after this live stream ends, so you can rewind it and look at that later. So yeah, can I contribute if I know Java, C, and C++? So C and
Java,
C++.
Yeah, Java probably not. C and C++, yes. But so there's a couple of ideas of projects there which are not maybe completely trivial. One would be to, most of them are to create code which are optimized implementation of some Python routine. So, for instance, we use automatons for doing the license detection in scan code. And very specifically, a data structure called AOCarasic, which is spelled AHO and later CORASIC. And we use a library to which we contributed, which is written in C and is designed to integrate in Python. And there's a new library, well, new, it's 10 years old, that I'd like to experiment with. So creating a binding that works and behaves the same with this other library would be an interesting challenge. But that's not entirely trivial. You need to dive into how you integrate at the C level with the Python language using the Python API at the C level. Another example would be a lot of the things we do, for instance, CAN code license detection, again, is doing diffs. We're diffing your code against tons of licenses. Now, it can be something which is very demanding. We use code that's been forked from the Python standard library, what's called difflib. It's been adapted to our context. Writing a C version of that code that's pretty performance sensitive, again, that will be also integrated with Python would be an example. So yes, for C and C++, Java, not much of interest for us. In fact, whenever there's things we can do or we have to do that requires some Java, we usually rewrite that in Python. We parse bytecode from Java in Python. We parse Maven POMs in Python. We're able also to deal with serialized Java byte streams in Python, this kind of thing. So usually we try to rewrite those things in Python to avoid to have too many languages, but C, C++, and also in earnest Go and Rust in the same context, that is specific optimizations and rewrite of some algorithm in this lower level language for performance is the area. So it's I wouldn't, if it's really not entry level C, C++, Go or Rust. It's a bit more advanced than entry level.
So he's
yes.
Asking, yeah.
So is there any chance of selection if we start contributing now? Yes, there's chance if you start contributing now, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. The field is entirely open. So yes, there's no question. The thing that's going to be important is, again, try to find a small bug that exists, a ticket, ask for help. If the thing is too big, we can make it smaller so it's easier to swallow as an initial contribution. And if there's ideas that are of interest to you, just discuss with the committee and ask for feedback. We like the project proposal not to be done in private. Again, this is not school, this is not a job interview. It's okay if you prefer to keep it private, but it's going to be open in the end anyway. If you make it open and participate and share that with the rest of the community, nobody will steal your ID, right? Because if somebody steals your ID anyhow, we'll know about that, and we will know that you were the first there anyway. So there's no concerns to have there. And the second thing, that's really a way to get early feedback. So you can organize your proposal in the best way, but don't overdo the proposal. The proposal is important. Being able to get to show us that you can complete your project is as much as important as the proposal itself. I mean, think we're mentors. We have a responsibility in the context of the Summer of Code with Google. We have a responsibility to ensure that we're using the funds and time of Google in a correct and proper way. We don't waste their time. So we don't want to waste their time. The way we can do that is ensure that you are successful. So part of our selection is ensuring that you are successful. We wouldn't be able to accept someone that we know would fail. That wouldn't be fair to the student. It wouldn't be fair to Google either.
Yes, yes, that's really important. Like, it's really a great responsibility to select the proposal, select the students that are really capable enough to compete and complete the project that they are assigned to. Really. So I guess there is no more new questions, and today we just covered everything. Like, most we scratched all the surfaces and all the dimensions of about code, and like how we can get started with it, and all the Gita channels. Like, a lot of people were asking, like they were asking about the Gita channel. So I already had pinned that comment. And yeah, Stephen, please also, okay, he's not there. So Philip, please
Yes.
also share the presentation, the slides that Stephen was sharing, so that we can make it public, so that it is available to audience too, so that they can come back to it later. And
Can you just send that to your email?
yeah, you can send to my email.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll do that. I'll do that.
Okay.
Thanks,
Good.
thanks, Ryan. So I guess that's it. How to cope up with complex code. So there's one more very important question. Like, if you want to ask, like, this is the final question.
How to cope up with complex code. So I guess there's two sides to it. Complex code in our code base and code, because we do code analysis. So there's two sides of it, right? The thing with complex code, so if it's the code of our own tool, we're trying to make it not complex. So if there's code that's complex and hard to read, the way you cope with it is you ensure first you have tests that sets the behavior of the current code in stone, and then after that you can start refactoring to simplify it and ensuring the test will pass. So that's one thing. Now, how to deal with complex code in terms of code analysis. Complexity from a semantic perspective is not really something that matters for analysis. If you think about being able to match similar code, if it's similar, whether it's complex or not really doesn't matter. So I guess your question was really more about the code of the project. If you feel code that's in an organization you really want to participate in and you'd like to contribute is too complex, there's two cases. Either the code is naturally complex and you may not be able to understand it. More often than not, it's just that it's too complex, and maybe it's a good idea to pass the organization and look for another one.
Yeah. So I guess that was it for the today. Like, thank you, Philip, Ayan, and Stephen for joining us, and we are really grateful to you. Like, you joined us in a for this amazing session, and we are really looking forward to our people, our students are really looking forward to contribute to your organization, do some meaningful contribution there, and the whole video will be available there. It's all recorded, so if you have any doubt in any phase of the video, like on getting started part or demoing part or anything else, you can definitely rewatch it again. You can go through it more than once. That's all okay. And thank you very much for joining. So any closing remarks from your side?
Yes, so thank you for having us. That's been really interesting, and thank you for helping us promote a bit our small projects. So thank you. You're doing really a great service to the community. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Really thankful. So bye everyone. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribing, and yeah, write your queries in the comment box. I will be there to assist you. And that's it for today. We will be meeting in another session for the Spring of Code. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.